What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the FF Face-Off. I'm your host, Anthony Cervino. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. Follow the show at the FF Face-Off. We can be found at all of the top social media and podcast platforms, and of course at fffaceoff.com. Today we're going to take a look at my top 5 early breakout running backs ahead of the NFL draft. These are guys you should be buying into if you're doing off-season best ball, off-season redraft drafts, mock drafting to see where you can get a certain player, and of course, dynasty fantasy football startup drafts, and guys you should be targeting when it comes to dynasty fantasy football trades at the running back position. Let's get right into it, and we are going to start with a guy from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. His name is Rachaad White, second-year breakout candidate. Rachaad White, well, what do we know about Rachaad White? Rachaad White was a third-round pick of the Buccaneers last season, and he has a big-time opportunity ahead with no more Leonard Fournette to take away opportunities. We know that the head coach, Todd Bowles, came out and said, hey, we want Rachaad White to become our 3-down back, and we know that 3-down backs in the current model of the NFL, they are few and far between. So when your head coach is saying Rachaad White is going to be our bell cow, is going to be our 3-down back, we believe he can do it all, we should be paying attention, especially when there is no legitimate competition in that backfield. Give me a break with Vaughn. I know they brought in Chase Edmonds, but he couldn't even make a putrid Denver Broncos stint work last season. He couldn't make a few games the Miami Dolphins. He's really just a guy. Rachaad White has all the opportunity in the world to emerge. Now, no more Tom Brady. This is going to be an offense led by Baker Mayfield. There should be, in theory, a lot of check down opportunities. What I worry about, because when we talk about the good, we got to talk about the bad. What I worry about is how many opportunities is this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense going to have in the money zone, in the red zone, on the goal line. So I worry about the touchdown department. I worry about the scoring department for this Tampa offense and for Rachaad White. But he kind of reminds me, in theory, of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Good running backs, not the greatest situation. So Rachaad White, to me, is a poor man's Najee Harris because he's going to get all the opportunities in the world. He's probably going to catch a lot of passes. Not going to be the most efficient guy. Might not score a ton, but when you're getting a ton of opportunity, you're going to cash in for your fantasy football managers. We know that Rachaad White didn't get a ton of opportunity really till the second half, and he still ended up with 58 targets. And in all the games that Rachaad White gave us double-digit PPR points, primarily when he finished in the RB1 tier, he saw a lot of volume when it comes to carries and target share. I mean, week 12 against Cleveland, 9 receptions. Week 13 against New Orleans, 6 receptions. Week 14 against San Francisco, 5 receptions. All 3 of those games, RB9, RB10, RB21. We even go to week 16 against Arizona. It was the RB14. Had 4 receptions for 53 yards. You see where I'm going here. Week 19 against Dallas, which was a playoff game, but here's more of that example. 11.7 PPR points, but caught 4 passes for 77 total yards. So I'm in on Rachaad White here. He's not going to be an RB1, but he's going to see enough volume to cash in. And maybe when you look at the top 15 to 20 running backs, that's where you could expect his ceiling to land. Now, if Baker Mayfield decides to figure it out, or maybe they turn to Kyle Trask and this offense gets going a little bit and Rachaad White scores more touchdowns, then we may be flirting with a fringe RB1. But if we're being realistic, expect Rachaad White to finish within the RB15 to RB20 range. Let's go to my next breakout running back candidate. This is another year 2 guy, and his name is Isiah Pacheco from the Kansas City Chiefs. Pacheco's in a similar situation to Rachaad White when it comes to presumed opportunity, because we know that they did not re-sign Jerick McKinnon yet, and McKinnon went off down the stretch and went ballistic and won a lot of fantasy managers' fantasy football titles. I do expect them to re-sign Pacheco, but we know that McKinnon is also the primary passing down back, and McKinnon's going to get the boatload, the lion's share of the carries in the opportunity department. We also know that Ronald Jones, not like he did anything anyway, he's out of town. We also know that this team is absolutely positively done with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Can they add another running back, which could affect Pacheco? Yes, but compared to what you have to pay for Pacheco, which isn't a lot when you look at his ADP, 62.5 in the FFPC, I don't hate that at all. Pacheco last season, again, this is a guy who got going a little bit down the stretch. He had quite a few double-digit PPR points from week 11 through the Super Bowl. Again, playoffs don't matter for our regular fantasy football leagues, but when we're trying to see how a player could be used in the upcoming season, we have to monitor their playoff usage. And Pacheco, from week 11 to week 22, which was the Super Bowl, he had double-digit PPR points in every single game but one. And the one game he didn't was that awkward week 15 game against the Houston Texans where he had 8.7. Isiah Pacheco is a very good running back. He was a number 10 back in true yards per carry at 4.8. The number 16 back in yards per touch at 5.2 yards per touch. Because this Chiefs offense is so Mahomes-centric, the running lanes are wide open. They're trying to figure out, the enemy defense is trying to figure out, well, how do we contain Mahomes, which means Pacheco has bigger running lanes. And when he gets those bigger running lanes, as you can see, he is pretty damn efficient with the football. He was also, this is kind of surprising, the number 25 back in red zone touches. He had 32 red zone touches with 5 goal line carries. And this is a guy who did not get going, like I said, until that week 11 range, maybe even week 10. Didn't do a ton in fantasy, but he played 58.7% of the snaps up to that week 10 game. He played fewer than 30.5% of the snaps in every other game for the first 9 weeks. So Pacheco, as the uptick got going and week 10 on, we saw him getting more involved right around that goal line. I am buying into Isiah Pacheco going into the NFL draft, because if the Chiefs leave the draft without a running back, expect Pacheco's price point to get a little bit higher. Let's go to my next guy. This is a guy I absolutely love. The Atlanta Falcons, second year back, Tyler Allgeier. And Tyler Allgeier, especially in Dynasty, I like this kid because next year, Cordarrelle Patterson might not be there. He is entering his walk year. He's getting a little bit older. This is probably his final year with the Atlanta Falcons. Tyler Allgeier in an offense that, let's face it, Cordarrelle Patterson got a little bit of run. So did Huntley. Tyler Allgeier still managed 1,035 rushing yards on 210 attempts. He also caught 16 for $139 with 4 total touchdowns. 10.0 fantasy points per game, good as the RB31 in that category. Played 16 games. Doesn't really get banged up. Pretty damn durable. And the Falcons were the number 1 team in team run plays per game. Allgeier, number 17 amongst all running backs and carries, number 15 amongst all running backs in red zone touches with 38, including 4 on the goal line. He was also the number 14 back in rushing yards. So this guy, who was a 5th-round pick, got a lot of run in an offense that's going to run the hell out of the football, which is what an Arthur Smith offense does best. Efficiency-wise, was pretty efficient. 4.6 true yards per carry, 4.9 actual yards per carry. That 4.6 true is good for the RB20 in that category. He was also the number 19 running back in yards per touch, giving us 5.2 yards per touch. When he has a football in his hands, he can evade tackles. He was number 12 in that category. He was also number 15 in juke rate, number 18 in breakaway run rate, and number 12 running back in breakaway runs. Number 22 in yards created. A little bit more elusive with the ball in his hands than what people think. I absolutely love Tyler Allgeier and his opportunity. I'm not going to love it if they take a guy like Bijan Robinson. I'm not going to love it if they take a top-tier running back on day one or day two. But with all the needs the Falcons have, primarily on defense, I don't foresee them taking a back, especially when Tyler Allgeier played so damn well last season. Let's go to another running back. We have two more to get through, and this guy's a third-year breakout candidate, and this is a guy who burned a lot of people last year because of how the Ravens mismanaged their running backs when it comes to injuries. This is J.K. Dobbins, of course. 10.2 fantasy points per game in the 8 games he did play. You can get him right now at a 51.9 average draft position at the FFPC. We know Gus Edwards is coming back. We know Dobbins is finally healthy. Behind those guys, there's not a lot. Now, I like J.K. Dobbins a lot more if, obviously, Lamar Jackson is the quarterback, because just like I said about Pacheco and Mahomes, well, when you're trying to stop Mahomes, you're going to have greater running lanes when you're that team's running backs. You could say the same thing about Philly running backs. You could say the same thing about Bears running backs, and we're going to say the same damn thing about Baltimore Ravens running backs. Now, last year they were the Ravens were the number 7 team, in team run plays per game. Now, when Lamar is starting, we know he was banged up and did not play a lot towards the end. This number 7 usually goes to like 1 or 2, kind of like the Falcons, but it drops down a little bit without Lamar. Dobbins, very good running back, checks off a lot of boxes. Injuries are a concern, but this guy is a terrific runner. He was the number 4 running back on true yards per carry, 5.2 true yards per carry, 5.7 actual yards per carry. He also gave us the 9th best yards per touch average at 5.7. He was a number 2 back in juke rate, number 3 running back in breakaway run rate. This is another guy that when he has a football in his hands, he's absolutely, positively phenomenal. We know that J.K. Dobbins, when he's featured and healthy, he is one of the better backs in the league. It's just a matter of getting him on the football field. Couple of nice games. Now, before the injury, if we go back to week 4 against Buffalo, RB10 that week gave us 22.3. 13 carries, including 5 in the red zone, 63 total yards, 4 receptions, 2 touchdowns. Then, of course, we know that doesn't last very long. After that, gets banged up. He wasn't really that healthy anyway. But then another good defense he did really well against in the playoffs against Cincinnati, one of the better defenses in the NFL. He had 13 carries. He had 4 receptions, but went off for 105 total yards and a touchdown. Good for 20.5 fantasy points. So we know that this Ravens offense are going to feature the run, and they're not going to be scared off against good run defenses. They're still going to feature their top guy, J.K. Dobbins, which is really good news for fantasy managers. 51.9 ADP is kind of high, but if we believe he's going to be healthy, J.K. Dobbins is going to exceed. He is going to exceed that average draft position. I don't foresee the Ravens adding any more running backs. They're going to go with Gus. They're going to go with J.K. Dobbins at the top. We do have to note they're bringing in Todd Monken, and they're off of Greg Roman at offensive coordinator. What's significant about this? We know that Todd Monken wants to throw the hell out of the football. They brought in receivers like Allgeier and OBJ. They might take another receiver in the NFL draft. They're trying to load up their receiving room. They want to throw the ball more, but that doesn't mean that guys like J.K. Dobbins aren't still going to be featured, because they're still going to run the ball, because Monken in college at the college level ran more than he did in the NFL. So I love J.K. Dobbins. I'm okay with the price point. I won't overspend when it comes to dynasty trades, but if you can get your hands on Dobbins, I would pull the trigger. Let's go to my final potential breakout running back. This guy is Alexander Mattison. This is a potential 50-year breakout. Now, Mattison, for the entirety of his career, he's always been behind Dalvin Cook. But Dalvin Cook may not be long for the Minnesota Vikings. Anytime their general manager or anytime Vikings brass is asked about Dalvin Cook in this roster, they're kind of non-committal. They could trade him. They could cut him with a post-June 1 designation. But even if Dalvin is on this roster, he is getting a little bit older, which means we could see Alexander Mattison more involved this season. And when Alexander Mattison is involved, this guy cashes the check. Alexander Mattison, we didn't see it so much last year. He had a couple of nice games. But if we go back to 2021, let's say, when he got the opportunity, he gave us a handful of games with over 20 PPR points. Week 3 against Seattle, 23.1 was the RB7 that week. Week 5 against Detroit, 26.3 was the RB6 that week in 2021. Go to week 13 against Detroit again, 21.4 PPR points that week, RB8. Week 16 against the Rams, 16 PPR points, good for the RB13 that week. And again, this is back in 2021, but just showing you that when he is a featured back in this offense, he is more than capable. Another good note about Alexander Mattison is the fact that he was a prioritized signing for the Minnesota Vikings in free agency. There was quite a few backs rumored to be available by trade. Guys like Miles Sanders was a free agent, and instead of going after a guy like Miles Sanders or going after a guy like Kareem Hunt, they brought back Alexander Mattison. They like what Alexander Mattison can do, and they like the way he fits into this offense. And Alexander Mattison, compared to these other guys in this breakdown, he's not going to cost you a ton. He is going as the 101st player off the board at the FFPC. He's not going to cost you a ton, at least right now in the Dynasty trade department. So Alexander Mattison is a value who could potentially break out depending on what the Minnesota Vikings decide to do at the running back position in and outside of the NFL draft. So if you want to buy Mattison, now is the time, because if the Vikings don't take it back in the NFL draft, we can see Mattison's value go up a little bit. It's going to cost you more. Let's say you wait and they cut Dalvin Cook and you don't have Mattison yet. Well, you're going to pay a lot for Alexander Mattison. So if you foresee the Vikings making a move like moving off of Dalvin Cook, buy Alexander Mattison now, because with Cook gone, Alexander Madison's going to be the bona fide RB1 in the Minnesota Vikings offense. All right, guys, this is another terrific video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification icon so you could be notified anytime I am live to answer your questions or drop content just like this. If you liked anything you heard in this video, hit the like button. Be sure to comment. I love engaging with each and every one of you. So if you comment, you ask a question, I'll get back to you, or one of the other Face-Off staff members will get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time, we'll see you later.